Hi everyone, this is Josie from First the Coffee Crochet. Welcome back to my channel. In this crochet tutorial, we're going to go over how to do the Granny's Grit Scarf. This scarf consists of rows of half double crochets, the grit stitch, which is made up of using single crochet stitches, and the granny stitch. It does have a border around the edges, and it is a very long scarf totaling about 104 inches long, and it's 6.5 inches wide. I did use 2 skeins of the Ferris Wheel Lion brand yarn, and it is a number 4 medium weight yarn. It's 270 yards a piece. So if you were to use another medium weight yarn, you would need about 540 yards to complete this scarf for the length that it is. You can make it shorter. Each repeat of these half double crochets, grit stitches, and granny blocks will give you about 6 inches in length. So you will need 540 yards of yarn and a 6mm crochet hook. You'll also need scissors and a tapestry needle to weave in your ends. And there is a written pattern for the scarf available on my website, and I'll leave a link for that down in the description below, and it'll also have all the information for the materials needed for the scarf. To start off, you're going to want to chain 24. And if you'd like to change the width of the scarf, your initial foundation chain just needs to be a multiple of 4. Once you've completed your foundation chain, for the first row, it's just going to be half double crochets all the way across. And we're going to be starting in the second chain from our hook. So that's this one here, the first and the second. So you'll just yarn over, insert your hook into that second chain, yarn over again and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Now we're just going to do that in each chain all the way across. And that should give you a total of 23 stitches. After you finish the last half double crochet of row 1, you're going to want to chain 1 and then turn your work. Now for the next 4 rows, we're going to go into what's called the grit stitch. And the grit stitch is just made up of using single crochet stitches, so it's nothing too out of the ordinary. This initial chain does not count as a stitch, so we'll be working in the first stitch of the row. And you're just going to do a single crochet in there, so insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So we're going to skip the next stitch, and then we're going to do 2 single crochets in the following stitch. And then we're skipping another stitch and doing 2 single crochets in the following. That's all the grit stitch is. Just skip 1 stitch and do 2 single crochets in the next. We're going to do this all the way across. And the last stitch of your row, so you'll be skipping this one, going into the last stitch, and we're going to be doing 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Now we'll chain 1, turn our work. For row 3, we're doing the grit stitch again. Again, this doesn't count as a stitch, and we're going to be working in this first stitch. So just single crochet one time in that first stitch, skip a stitch, and then do 2 single crochets. We're going to do this across this row and then for 2 more rows. So all the way through row 5, you'll be doing the grit stitch. And just remember, when you're doing these, you start off with 1 single crochet in the first stitch and end with 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Okay, after you've completed row 5, you've gotten 1 row of half double crochets and 4 rows of grit stitch. You're just going to chain 1, turn your work, and then we're doing another row of half double crochets all the way across. The initial chain does not count as a stitch, so we will be starting in this first stitch here. And we're just going to continue to do this all the way across the row. Once you've completed row 6, for row 7, we're going to start going into the granny stitch. And we'll be doing 7 rows of the granny stitch. So for the first one, you're going to want to chain 4 and then turn your work. This is going to count as an initial double crochet plus a chain, and we're counting that in the first stitch. After this, we're going to skip 2 more stitches, so that's the second and third stitch, and in the 4th stitch of the row, we're going to do 3 double crochets. So that's just yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over again and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. We're doing this 2 more times for a total of 3 double crochets in this same stitch. And then we chain 1, skip 3 more stitches, so 1, 2, 3, and then that 4th, doing 3 more double crochets. Do this 2 more times, so chain 1, skip 3 stitches, 3 double crochets, okay, so we have 4 clusters of double crochets here. We're going to skip 3 more. We're going to do 3 more double crochets. We're going to chain 1 again. You should have 3 stitches left. So we're skipping 2, and then we're doing a double crochet in this last stitch. So for row 8, we're going to chain 3. We're going to turn our work. This again is counting as a double crochet stitch. Now in this chain space here, we're going to do 2 double crochets. Okay, so this is going to count as 3 double crochet stitches, including that initial chain. Chain 1, and then skipping over these 3 double crochets, and we're going into this next chain space. We're going to do 3 double crochets. And then chain 1, and we're just going to do that in each of these across, and then stop once you get to this last chain space here. So just do 3 double crochets in the chain space and then chain 1. And once we get to the end and we're at that last chain space, we're going to do 2 double crochets into this chain space. And then we're going to do a double crochet into the turning chain. Now for row 9, we're going to chain 4, turn our work, and again this counts as a double crochet plus 1 chain. We're going to skip over these 3 double crochets, and we're going to do 3 double crochets into this chain space here. And we're just going to do that all the way across in each chain space. Just do 3 double crochets and then chain 1, and stop after you completed this last chain space. Once you've done the 3 double crochets in the last chain space, chain 1, and then in the turning chain of this initial chain of the previous row, we're going to put in another double crochet, and that'll be your last stitch of the row. So for rows 10, 11, 12, and 13, you're just going to be repeating rows 8 and 9, and that'll give you a total of 7 rows of the granny stitch. After you've finished row 13, and you've completed the 7 rows of granny stitches, we're going to go back into doing half double crochets for row 14. So you just want to chain 1, turn your work around. This doesn't count as a stitch, so we'll be starting in the first stitch. You'll just put a half double crochet into there, and then do a half double crochet in the chain space, and then you'll do a half double crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then a half double crochet in the chain space again. We're just going to do this all the way across, doing half double crochets in the stitches and then 1 half double crochet in the chain space. Once you're at the last chain space, you're going to do a half double crochet into the chain space and then a half double crochet into the turning chain. For rows 15 and 16, we're going to be going back into doing the grit stitch. So you'll want to chain 1, turn your work, and starting in this first stitch, do a single crochet, then skip 1 stitch and do single crochets in the next. Skip a stitch, 2 single crochets. We're just going to do this all the way across, and in the last stitch you should have 2 single crochets. Row 16 is the grit stitch again, so just chain 1, turn your work, do the same thing as you did in the last row, starting in this first stitch, single crochet, skip a stitch, 2 single crochets, skip another stitch, and do 2 single crochets again. At the end of row 16, just chain 1 and turn your work, In row 17, we're doing half double crochets again all the way across, and we'll be starting in the first stitch. So after completing row 17, the rest of the scarf is a repeat from row 7, that's the first row of this granny stitch block, up through row 17, so it's an 11 row repeat. You're going to repeat these 11 rows 18 times. So that'll carry you up through row 215. After you've completed row 215, we're going to go back in and do another 7 rows of the granny stitch. So that'll be a repeat of the same thing as we did from row 7 through 13. Right, rows 216 through 222 are going to be a repeat of rows 7 through 13, which are the granny stitch rows. Starting at row 223, we'll be going back into doing the same thing we did at the beginning of the scarf, which is a half double crochet, 4 rows of the grit stitch, and another row of half double crochets to end this. So for row 223, you're going to repeat row 14, which is just half double crochet. So you'll chain 1 and turn your work, and we'll be starting in this first stitch. You'll be putting a half double crochet in each stitch and 1 in the chain space. You'll do this all the way across the row. You should have 23 stitches total in the row. Okay, at the end of row 223, I'm just going to chain 1, turn your work, and for rows 224 through 227, we'll be doing the grit stitch, so that'll just be a repeat of the same thing we did in row 15. We'll be starting in the first stitch, doing a single crochet, and then from the rest of the row, skipping 1 stitch, 2 single crochet. You'll do this for a total of 4 rows. Okay, at the end of row 227, you'll have completed the 4 rows of grit stitch. So you'll want to chain 1 and turn your work. And for row 228, we're just going to go in and do 1 last row of half double crochets, and that's starting in this first stitch. After you finish row 228, the last row of half double crochets, we're going to start on the border. So we'll chain 1. You'll just turn your work to the side like this. Your border is going to be single crochet stitches, so you'll want to evenly space the single crochets down the side. There's no exact set number, you just need to eyeball it and make sure they look evenly spaced out. So I would just start in this side one here. And it looks good to put another one here. So you just keep going down like this, just try to keep them evenly spaced. And these chain spaces in the granny stitch, a lot of times you're going to be putting 2 in those chain spaces and 2 in the double crochet spots. General rule of thumb is usually if it's a single crochet space, you're going to be doing 1 stitch for the row. Double crochet, you're going to be doing 2 stitches. But if it looks like you're starting to bunch up, just go ahead and space it out just a bit further. When you get to the corner, this is where you're going to want to put 3 single crochets into this corner stitch. Let's do 1, 2, and 3. Another nice thing about borders, you can go ahead and just tuck the tails in as you're going around. And once you have the 3 in the corner stitch, just continue on down. And you'll do this for each corner as you go around. And once you come back around to your first stitch, just go ahead and join it with a slip stitch. And you can go ahead and tie off and weave in your ends and enjoy your new scarf.